let's start with a sentence that probably hits very close to home. There is a silent, growing tension in modern families where seniors possess a high-value mental asset that younger generations are currently neurologically incapable of valuing. And, it's likely causing some deep frustration in your own life. You see the patterns, you absolutely know the outcome, but whenever you try to share that hard-earned perspective, you're met with, what? Resistance, or maybe worse, just silence. So how in the world do we solve this? Well, today we're going to unpack a really powerful framework. It's called the Strategic Quietist. Now, this isn't about giving up or just biting your tongue. Nope. It's about fundamentally shifting your strategy to reclaim your influence and, honestly, your peace of mind. And it's all based on a new understanding of what's really happening inside the minds of your loved ones. So let's get into it. Over the next few minutes, we're going to walk through a 6-part journey together. We'll start by uncovering why your wisdom feels rejected. Then we'll get to the core solution, becoming a strategic quietist. And I'll give you a practical protocol to put it into action right away. And finally, we'll reframe your role as a guardian of the long view, leaving you with a really powerful path forward. So let's jump right into section 1, the hidden truth. This is all about getting to the root cause of that communication breakdown. And I promise you, it's probably not what you think. Okay, this is the first and, honestly, the most crucial point to really let sink in. The resistance you're feeling, it's not a personal attack. It is not a sign that your wisdom is outdated or that you're not respected. It's a predictable, scientific phenomenon that's rooted in the very wiring of the human brain as it develops over a lifetime. Just understanding this can be incredibly liberating. So this slide introduces the core concept. It's called the Temporal Horizon Gap. Think of it this way. After 60+ years, your brain has physically changed. It's developed what researchers call a long-wave perspective. It is literally optimized to see the big picture, to understand cause and effect over decades, and to know the difference between a temporary crisis and a real, permanent problem. A younger brain, though, it's still wired for what we can call tactical survival. It's built to react to what's immediate, to solve the problem that's right in front of its face, right now. And wow, this quote just illustrates the conflict perfectly. Imagine someone is in a tiny boat, getting tossed around by a violent localized storm, okay? They are bailing water. They're fighting the waves. They are completely focused on not sinking in the next 5 minutes. And you're standing on a calm mountaintop miles away, and you can see the entire weather system. You see the storm will pass in an hour. You can see the safe harbor just beyond it. So you hold up a strategic map to show them the way. But from their perspective, down in that chaotic storm, your map it's useless. It feels totally irrelevant, maybe even a little condescending. They don't need a map for tomorrow. They need to survive the next wave. This is the disconnect happening in your conversations every single day. So let's move on to section 2 and see how this all builds. This internal neurological gap, it's being massively amplified by the external world we all live in now. The environment itself is creating 2 completely different realities for 2 different brains. So on one side, you have a world that's built on what we can call iterative resilience. You learned wisdom by actually living through things, recessions, personal losses, massive technological shifts. You learned the profound value of patience, of waiting for the dust to settle before you make a big decision. But on the other side, younger generations are living in an age of what you might call digital accelerationism. Truth isn't found through slow, lived experience. It's measured by the speed of a social media notification. Their entire reality is driven by something experts are calling high-velocity anxiety, this constant nagging fear that if they don't act immediately, right now, they're going to be left behind for good. And what's happening in your brain during all this? Well, research from the National Institutes on Aging shows that as we get older, our brains naturally shift towards something called socio-emotional selectivity. Basically, we stop sweating the small stuff. We begin to instinctively prioritize deep relationships, emotional truth, and the big picture meaning of our lives. It's actually a beautiful natural maturation process. You are neurologically shifting your focus to what truly matters. So, here's the clash. You, operating from a place of what we can call strategic peace and this newfound clarity, you offer the advice to slow down or be patient, think about the long term. But to a brain that's drowning in tactical panic and high-velocity anxiety, that advice doesn't sound wise at all. It sounds dangerous. It sounds like a direct obstacle to the urgency they feel they need to survive. And that is why your well-intentioned wisdom is so often rejected. And this brings us right to the turning point of our whole explainer, Section 3, the Strategic Quietist. Now that we understand the problem, on both a neurological and an environmental level, we can finally introduce a new, much more effective model for influence. So the big question is, how do you actually navigate this, right? How do you bridge this massive gap in perception and wiring without driving yourself crazy or, even worse, eroding the very family bonds you're trying so hard to protect?
The answer lies in a fundamental identity shift. It's about moving away from being an instructional authority, the person with the manual who tells everyone what to do, and shifting toward becoming a strategic quietist. This new role reframes your wisdom not as a set of instructions to be broadcast, but as a high-value, sovereign asset that you manage with incredible care and precision.
And this new approach is called Wisdom Stewardship. And believe me, it is a true art form. It's the practice of knowing that the power of your insight lies not in its constant delivery, but in its perfect timing. The goal is no longer to be right in every single moment, but to preserve the value of your wisdom for the one moment when it can actually be heard. This gets rid of the burnout of offering rejected advice and replaces it with a calm, confident sense of purpose. This quote just captures the entire philosophy. Think about it for a second. When you constantly push your advice, it just becomes background noise. It gets devalued through oversupply. But when you hold it back, when you treat it like a sovereign gift, its perceived value just skyrockets. It becomes a pull resource that people actually seek out, rather than a push notification they're trying to ignore. You stop being the lecturer and you become the oracle. And that, right there, changes everything.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do it in practice? Let's move to Section 4 and lay out the practical toolkit, the Strategic Wait Protocol. These aren't just tips. This is a system for preserving your power.
So this protocol has 4 steps, and we're going to walk through them carefully. The inquiry-only boundary, narrative embedding, the 24-hour mirror, and the value alignment query. First up, the inquiry-only boundary. This is simple, but it's also radical. For the next month, let's say, you give 0 unsolicited advice. I mean, none. You only offer your perspective if you are explicitly asked. This is so powerful because it breaks that defensive cycle. It creates a space where curiosity can actually start to grow. Okay, step 2 is narrative embedding. So when you are asked, don't give instructions. Instead, you share a story about a time you failed. So instead of saying, don't take that job, you say something like, that reminds me of a job I took where I was so focused on the salary, and it turned out to be a disaster. This lets them absorb the lesson without feeling corrected. It's kind of like learning by stealth. Step 3, the 24-hour mirror. This is for those moments you see them about to make what looks like a clear mistake. Your gut instinct is to jump in, right? Well, the protocol demands you wait 1 full day. This pause lets that high anxiety moment pass for both of you, and it allows for a much calmer conversation later, if one is even still needed. And finally, step 4 is the value alignment query. Instead of giving the answer, you ask a question that forces them to think long-term. Something like, how do you see this decision playing out over the next 5 years? This helps them build their own wisdom muscle. Okay, let's move into our final sections, starting with Section 5. This is all about reframing this entire struggle not as some kind of problem, but as a profound achievement of a life well lived.
Please, let this one sink in. The temporal horizon gap, that cognitive divide that causes so much frustration, it's not a sign that you are out of touch. It is the undeniable proof of your developmental success. It is the prize you have earned for navigating 60, 70, 80 years of life. You have reached what psychologists call the summit of integration. It's a level of cognitive and emotional depth where you can hold complexity, see the whole picture, and remain steady in a storm. In a world that's obsessed with the short term, you are a guardian of the long view. And this isn't a passive role, it's an essential stabilizing force in your family and in the world, even when it goes unrecognized.
And this is probably the most important thing to hold on to. Your presence, your stability, your deep-seated knowledge of what lasts, all of that makes you the true north in their lives. Now, they may be spinning in circles, chasing fleeting signals, but your position is fixed and true. They may not know how to read the compass yet, but the comfort of just knowing that a true north exists, well, that's invaluable. Be patient. They will eventually look for it. And that brings us to our final section, the power of silence, and your clear path forward starting from this moment on. So here is a gentle but really potent challenge for you. For just the next 24 hours, I want you to identify one piece of advice you are just itching to give to someone, and then I want you to intentionally withhold it. Just observe. Don't push, don't try to fix, Simply wait. Wait for the question. See what happens when you create a space for them to seek out your wisdom rather than having to defend against it. This simple act is the very first step toward mastering the art of the strategic quietist. You know, in the end, true influence isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about presence. It's about embodying a calm, steady wisdom that becomes a kind of gravitational force. So, remember our key takeaways. Your wisdom is a high-value asset, so you have to manage it strategically. Use stories, what we call narrative embedding, not instructions, to share lessons. And aim for influence through your presence. Guard the insight, calm the mind, and lead your life at the silence that proves your power.